from WBBZ-TV Sports. It's time to beat the champ. Now, here are your hosts, Paul Peck and Sue Novoitsky.
We're in the Southern Tier to kick off Season 2 of Beat the Champ. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Jamestown. My name is Paul Peck with Hall of Fame bowlers Sue Novoitsky and Janelle Sabin, and we've got a great lineup of bowlers to get ourselves started here for 2017. Sue, an interesting mix of outstanding returners like Tony Dolan, Chuck Jagodzinski, George Szczublewski, along with 6 bowlers making their Beat the Champ debuts who are all from right here in Jamestown.
Right. Well, we like to school everyone, and we like to talk about how these bowlers have seen all these lane conditions and make all these adjustments. This is a different aspect where you kind of are used to the bowling center, you're comfortable with your environment, you know how the lanes break down, you know what moves you're going to make.
Yeah, and Janelle, that means with 6 bowlers from here in Jamestown, we're going to have big crowds, which means it's going to get a little wild there. Are you prepared for that?
Definitely. It'll be awesome to see some fresh faces in the crowd this week.
Yeah, we've got fresh faces, we've got familiar faces, we've got everything you want for a terrific season. Kickoff here of Beat the Champ. We're going to get it started. George Szczublewski and Justin Van Arsdale, our first match of the day, so let's get rolling. There's our first match of the day. On the right, it's George Szczublewski, and the challenger is from right here in the Jamestown area. That's Justin Van Arsdale to get us kicked off here on our first week back at the Jamestown Bowling Company. We were here over the summer. We had some great bowling, and we're looking forward to great bowling again. And to give us a little perspective on the great bowling that goes on here at the Jamestown Bowling Company, we're happy to welcome in the owner of this bowling house. Jimmy is back with us. Jim, always good to talk to you. How you doing?
Good, Paul. How you guys been?
We're doing great, and we're looking forward to a good month of bowling here. And as Sue and I talked about, we've got some interesting names, new names, not necessarily new to you because you know a lot of the guys because they're regulars here, but maybe new to some of our viewers.
Yes, on our last qualifier we had here, we didn't really have a good local, we had a good local turnout, but to make the show, it was mostly the out-of-town guys, so it'll be a good experience for a lot of these bowlers that haven't been on TV before.
Yeah, and the weather was a little bit, you guys got hit pretty good with some snow during the weekend of the qualifying back in December, so that limited amount of the people that traveled down here, but that opened up some spots for your local guys, and I know we're excited to see 6 house bowlers from here at the Jamestown Bowling Company compete on the next 3 weeks.
Yeah, it'll be good exposure for the bowlers and the bowling company, so we're looking forward to it.
So you saw the first strike by Justin Van Arsdale, and there's the first throw for George Szczublewski. George on his 4th Beat the Champ show in his bowling career, an overall record of 3 wins and 2 losses, and he's coming off the win 2 weeks ago at Mancuso's Batavia Bowling Center that allows him to qualify here. George bowled very well in that last match.
Right, and we always talk about how they have to make that transition to a different bowling center, and they haven't really they haven't had to qualify here, so they haven't bowled on it before, so they're really relying on their practice session to line up.
Yeah, George said he hasn't really bowled here a lot, a few tournaments here and there, and you know, doesn't have a lot of experience here. So again, interesting to see how that juggles against Justin, who bowls here all the time, versus George, who doesn't bowl here very much at all.
Right. Well, let me ask you this, Jim. When you have to prepare for a tournament where it's going to be a long day of bowling like it is going to be here, do you tend to put a little bit more oil on the lanes so that they hold up longer for the day, or is this your typical league shot that you would put out at night?
It is our typical league shot, and the reason that we don't go heavier is this bowling center surface, or maybe a combination of the type of oil we're using on the surface, it tends to be pretty slick anyway, so it usually holds up pretty good. So we're afraid if we put anything like an extra head run or something, that it might just make it too tight, and then the back ends are just going to get, you know, soaked, and it's going to make it uglier as the day goes on.
Yes, and that's how I kind of want to describe it for the people at home, because it's really just not that simple to put a little bit more oil out there to hold up, because it will change the back end of the lane. And when people see how the ball, it's sort of a skid roll hook. So it skids in the front of the lane, then it starts to pick up a roll and it hooks. But you need to see that in the back end to create carry. So if you put too much oil on, you lose the back ends. You got that
Wasn't that an 80s hair band, Skid Roll Hook? Didn't they have like a big hit in the 80s?
Oh, Sebastian Bach references. We don't want to go there.
Speaking of 80s, Justin Van Arsdale, I don't even think was born in the 80s. He's 26 years old. He's from here in Frewsburg, not far from Jamestown, a machinist at Ring Precision Components, and he's off to a good start with strikes in the first 2 frames, and now he has a little bit of work to do here in frame number 3. What can you tell us about Justin, Jim?
Well, actually, before he has his current job that he's working now, he used to be my head mechanic on the pin spotters.
Oh, there you go.
He was with me for a few years.
So he really knows this place. He knows where stuff is hidden in this place.
He does, and he used to oil the lanes, and so he might have a little bit of a obviously inside advantage, but no, but he's a good bowler, and he's just got married, settled down, couple kids. Like I said, went on to a little better job.
All right, interesting challenge here, and Justin can't get them all, so it's an open frame in the 3rd for Justin Van Arsdale, and back to George Szczublewski, who's working strike and spare in the first 2 frames. 51 years old, from West Seneca, maintenance supervisor at the Olin Corporation, been bowling for 25 of his 51 years, right-handed bowler, as you can see, and we've seen plenty of George Szczublewski and over the course of our first season of Beat the Champ. And there's a nice 3rd frame strike for George. What jumps out at you, Sue, about George's bowling style?
It's funny you say that, because I just saw the rerun of that shot right there, and he plays down and in, and we see a lot of people play down and in, but he's got a lot of rotation on his ball. He throws it really good, but he can keep it on line. He doesn't have to open up the lane so much, and I've seen him get in trouble a couple of times, but overall, I think he's got just a really nice, smooth game with a good roll on his ball. What do you think, Jim?
Yeah, yes, a lot of forward roll, so it rolls early, so it's not going to back end too much, and he just keeps it on a nice safe line.
This feels like a good time to take a short break. We'll be right back with more action on Beat the Champ. Welcome back to Beat the Champ. Let's get back to the action here on WBBZ-TV.
Hi, I'm here with our returning champion, George Szczublewski. What's it like to come from being a champion in another house to having to take on an entirely different lane condition?
I don't know, it's a good question. We'll see. Warming up here, I got a decent look. I don't think I have as good a look as Justin does, but Justin bowls here, so we'll see how it plays out.
Well, how different is it coming from Batavia? How different does this shot play than it did in Batavia?
Right now, I think Batavia, with being wood, me being a little faster, I think Batavia probably played in my favor. I only bowled 1 game, but bowled really well.
Well, good luck today.
Thank you.
Hi, Justin. Do you bowl league here at Jamestown Bowling Company?
I do.
Did that factor into you wanting to bowl and see if you can make the show here?
Yeah.
Do you know all of the adjustments you're going to make? Are they playing similar to how they play in league?
Yeah, pretty similar.
So we expect to see the changes, like the way they break down, the moves you have to make, the ball changes you have to make, pretty similar to what you use in league here?
Yeah, I'm anticipating the same thing.
The first matches are always interesting because you have that dynamic of our top qualifier who bowled a bunch of qualifying here at this house to make it as the top qualifier against our returning champion who might not have bowled here at all, or maybe the last time he bowled here was a year ago.
Right.
So the first matches, as you and I have talked about, Sue, are always interesting. It's more of a survival for the returning champion like George Szczublewski. Just get me through this one and I'll start to figure things out. And there's George struggling in the 8th frame.
We were talking as George was up to bowl, and it looked like his ball, was slow. That looked like it was really slow, and it could have slowed down. He hit the dry, but it looked a lot like the speed was a lot slower, which would cause the ball to hook.
Well, Justin really needs to strike here a little bit to make up a pretty big advantage, but because of that open by George, that opportunity might be there. See what Justin can do, and that's what he needed to do.
That was a great
strike
shot.
In the 8th frame. Terrific shot. As you mentioned, Jim, Justin has a couple little girls at home, ages 3 and 2, Livia and Lux, with his fiance Casey. So he's got a little family support.
Does he have them out here bowling, Jim?
Not quite yet. They're still pretty small, but they come and watch.
Why, were you bowling at 2 years old? You probably were, weren't you?
No, I don't think I was. There's pictures of me in the bowling center.
So here's another big chance for Justin and another answer with a big strike in the ninth frame. So now this is getting interesting.
Well, very quickly it's become a 12-pin match.
From a 60-pin match not that long ago. So now the pressure goes back on George Szczublewski after the open frame in the eighth. He'll have to finish strong here. First match from the Jamestown Bowling Company. And there's the answer that George needed.
That's just the interesting thing about these bowlers as competitors, because Justin, you know, he's had a couple strikes out there, but he was fishing around, trying to get lined up, and then he got that opening and was able to put a double together after he wasn't really, you know, able to find anything. And it's just the competitive nature of the bowlers, is they can bear down and make good shots when they need to.
Justin, he's a pretty fierce competitor.
10th frame now for George Szczublewski. And another big strike. So George has answered the bell here after that hiccup in the 8th frame. And there's our Castellone Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram scoreboard showing you where we are at down the home stretch of this one between Justin and George.
Yeah, he can close them out with 9 spare.
9 spare will shut Justin out.
So here's the opportunity for George. Well, there's the 9.
That was interesting pin collision.
That was a strange, well, I guess you'd call that a blow or 4-pin. It's usually the 7-pin that stands up on that type of hit, but weird.
So what happened then? Tell us why that happened the way that it did.
Well, it finished really late, and the pins just went out in an unusual fashion, and it didn't even wiggle the 4-pin.
No.
So a clinching opportunity is successful for George Szczublewski. And he puts a 212 on the board, and that's going to be enough to advance him to our next match against another Jamestown bowler in Dan Gould. And it's a good debut for Justin Van Arsdale here on Beat the Champ, as he'll finish things out in the 10th frame. You got to get some of your guys from Jamestown to start making the drives up to Buffalo here, Jim. And you know, it's fun to see the guys when we're down here. We want to see more of them up there too.
Definitely. I know a few have gone up, but obviously we'd like to get a few more up there, and a few more Buffalo guys down here. Obviously.
Absolutely, right. Right. You know, and again, as we mentioned, the weather was a little difficult during the weekend to qualify. I know there's some other tournaments going on. There was a big tournament in Rochester the same weekend that your qualifying was going on. So a couple of guys had to make a choice as to where they wanted to go. So, you know, always a little bit of a challenge this time of year. Good, strong finish for Justin Van Arsdale. Gets a nice round of applause from his cheering section that's here at the Jamestown Bowling Company, and he will finish strong in a good debut here for Justin Van Arsdale. So, you know, carrying the torch here for all the Jamestown guys making their debuts here today. It's not going to be a win for Justin, but he'll hand it over to Dan and the rest of the guys to keep bowling well. So Justin Van Arsdale finishes out with 4 consecutive strikes, and boy, it winds up a 212 to 211 win for George Szczublewski. Didn't think it was going to be that close, but a good performance by Justin in this one.
No, it shows you the importance of making your spares. So you could be an open in the middle of a game like that, just turned it right around.
Yes, it was. It was 2 opens for Justin in frames 3 and 6, wind up deciding this match. So we'll talk to Justin, get his take on the way this match went, and preview our next match when we return to the Jamestown Bowling Company. You're watching Beat the Champ. Well, Justin, nothing fun about a 1-point loss. You battled your way hard. George Szczublewski winds up with the 212-211 victory. Give me a sense on how things went for you in your debut.
Well, I was excited to be here. and I was a little nervous coming into the game. Made some bad shots and paid the price for it, and couldn't capitalize on any of his. So.
Right. Well, the two open frames obviously were keys in this one, but nonetheless, Jim is here to dish out a little prize money to you.
That was a great bowling, man.
Thank you.
Got a $50 cash prize.
All right, thank you.
All right, so a good debut for Justin Van Arsdale. We've got more of his fellow Jamestown bowlers to come, including in our next match. We're back after this with George Szczublewski versus Dan Gould from here at the Jamestown Bowling Company. We're back right after this.
Hi Dan, what brought you out here for to try out for Beat the Champ?
Well, I've always been interested in bowling since I was about 8 years old, and just a thrill of bowling on TV would be pretty fun today.
Have you ever bowled on television before?
I have. I have bowled on the Jamestown TV Bowling Challenge many times back in the day when they used to have that show on, so that was a lot of fun.
So none of these lights and all these cameras aren't going to bother you at all today?
Hopefully not, but we'll see what happens.
Are you a league bowler here at Jamestown Bowling Company?
Yes, I am. Yep. Yeah, I bowl Thursday nights up here in the Scratch Doubles League.
What do you average out here?
232.
232, very nice. So we hope to see a lot of 232s out there today.
It'd be really nice to do that today.
All right, well, bowl well.
All right, thank you.
It's match number 2 from here at the Jamestown Bowling Company. Our returning winner, George Szczublewski, and on the right, you got a brief glimpse at Dan Gould. We'll talk more about Dan in a moment, but George will start things off as he tries to follow up that 212-211 victory in the first match of the day. It didn't feel like it was that close, even though it couldn't have been any closer than it was.
No, there was 38 pin difference in the 6th frame of that game, and it ended up turning into a 1-pin match.
So let's see if George has found a little groove, and right off the bat, that may be the case, because George ended with a couple of strikes in the last match to solidify that narrow victory. And now we get our first look at 31-year-old Dan Gould from right here in Jamestown. Full-time works at Tops Friendly Markets in the meat department. He is a regular bowler here at the Jamestown Bowling Company, has been bowling since he was 8 years old. And Jim, give us the scouting report on Dan Gould.
Yes, Dan, his league average is in the low 230s. Usually me and him have a battle every year in the doubles league for high average. Every once in a while somebody else will sneak in, but it's usually me and him. And again this year we're a couple pins apart. So, and he's a real strong competitor. He bowls a lot of weekend tournaments, and he's used to this kind of competition.
Right. So even though he's making his Beat the Champ debut, he's been in these settings before, is what you're telling me.
Yes, sir.
So Dan with a spare to open things up here in the first frame, and he'll slide over to the other lanes, and we'll get our second look here at Dan Gould. As I mentioned, bowls regularly here on Thursdays at the Jamestown Bowling Company, and has also been an outstanding bowler from going back to his high school days here in Jamestown. So looking forward to getting a look here at Dan. And again, he's the second of our Jamestown house bowlers making their Beat the Champ debuts. And this time, a little hang up there. And he'll have his work cut out for him for another spare.
Well,
what are you seeing already so far here?
We were talking about George's role and his forward role. You see two very different styles here between George and Dan. George has a very fluid arm swing. He uses the pendulum arm swing to generate his speed, which is you push away and you let the arm swing carry your ball in a straight line. If you see, Dan uses a little more muscle.
Very little arm swing.
Yes, he has a shorter back swing, and he really, like at the bottom of his swing, he really comes up the back really hard. Gets a strong roll going on.
That's a little bit unusual to not see. I mean, we've seen guys whose balls are scraping the ceiling on their backswing sometimes, and to see that was interesting. So now we can watch George and see the varying styles. A pretty good arm swing on George's part.
George actually has a picture-perfect arm swing. It gets up to his shoulder height in the back, and very, very straight.
All right, what didn't work there is he leaves a cluster of pins. What didn't work on that one for George?
He's kind of riding the oil line, and if he doesn't hit it perfect, it just kind of doesn't roll up.
Yeah, he kept that one didn't get out to the dry boards as quickly as others, and we're probably getting a little bit of carry down now, so I think both those factors contributed, and he chopped it.
Yeah, the 5-pin will hang up there, and a little disappointment on George's face tells you that that's an open frame here in the second. Needed to be a little more right to pull all 4 of those pins in.
Yeah, Jim mentioned carry down, which is what happens is the bowlers push the oil down the lane with their ball. We call it carry down, and it makes it oilier down the lane than where it started. So you won't see the ball roll up as well. Kind of got to get to the right of that and use the dry boards to create roll.
So a position adjustment is how you respond to that? Position on where your takeoff is from, Jim? Is that what you saw George try to do, or what you want to do when that's happening?
Yeah, you got to start with with moving your feet to the right, and sometimes moving your feet and your target to the right, to get around that carry down that's past the 42-foot oil line where the oil pattern started with the 18 feet of clean back ends. Now it's probably down to maybe 15 feet of back ends. Just making a guess on that, but it's just less aggressive on the back end.
Right, so it's strike, open, spare in the first 3 for George Szczublewski. Dan Gould working on spares in the first 2. Now it gets going here on frame number 3. As Jim mentioned, a 232 impressive average in league bowling for Dan Gould. And that 10-pin will hang up for him again. Pretty impressive bio there for Dan. Bowled for Jamestown High School, where he still holds the Chautauqua County record of 218 high average, and at one point held the City of Jamestown record for highest series of 858. Pretty amazing that doesn't hold up as the record anymore, Jim.
Yeah, we got a young gentleman who's not even living in Jamestown anymore. I believe he bowled 868, so that's...
Got to get him on the show.
Yeah, if he moves back here, I think he's in college right now in Ohio.
Jim, give us as we watch Dan move on here to the 4th frame, give us a little sense on, this is our second trip back here to Jamestown. We were here over the summer. We had some great bowling. Chuck Jagosinski, Matt White were the guys that really dominated. What's been the reaction from back then? How the trip down here, how the performance was now that everybody's seen it on TV? What kind of response did you get?
Well, I hear a lot of people are watching the show. It's probably more since we've had it here, and we haven't had yet excellent turnouts for qualifiers, but we're hoping the next time around, we kind of experimented with an out-of-season qualifier, and now an in-season. Of course, we got hurt by the weather this time, but we're going to shoot next year. We're talking about October, so hopefully we'll miss both those things that affected our qualifiers, so we'll see what happens.
We're going to be back with more Beat the Champ bowling action in just a minute. Welcome back to Beat the Champ. Let's get back to the action here on WBBZ-TV.
So I'm here with Sue's mother. What's your first name?
My name is Sandra.
Sandra. What was Sue like as a kid? How did she get into bowling?
Her grandparents on her dad's side were avid bowlers, excellent bowlers. And she just seemed to pick it up. Little Polish girls are born with a little tiny bowling ball at the end of their fingers, and then it develops as they get older. And
Definitely.
She was always very good.
That's awesome. At what age did she start bowling?
Very young, very young. Probably 4 or 5 with her dad. And I bowled with her on a league when I think she was about 12.
Now, when did you start seeing in Sue, wow, she's going to make a career out of this?
Then.
Yeah, that young?
Oh, yes. I was shocked because I like to bowl down the gutter.
Me too.
And I couldn't believe hers went the way it was supposed to go.
Oh, wow.
So you can see it's a 1-pin advantage right now for George Szczublewski as he moves to the 8th frame. I'm sorry, Dan's still up here in the 8th frame. And there's Dan's first strike of the day. A little bit of relief on his face.
Yeah, really 8 frames for that guy not to strike. That's amazing. I don't think I've ever seen that before.
That's the beat the champ effect a little bit, particularly, I mean, you heard Justin Van Arsdale say a little nerves, he had to overcome, and, and we, Sue and I have seen this on a regular basis all through 2016 is guys in their first match, it takes them a little while to figure things out, to get beyond that. And George still muttering to himself a little bit there about why he can't get things to work.
Well, that was a better shot, but it hit kind of flat, left the old flat 10.
Good spare.
Spare in the 8th frame for George Szczublewski, so we're tied.
Yep. This is when it's important to stay clean and make your spares and not do anything. Don't change anything erratic because, no one here has a great ball reaction.
So crucial 9th and 10th frames for both guys in a tie match here at the Jamestown Bowling Company between George Szczublewski and Dan Gould. I don't know whether George liked it when he threw it, but he liked the results.
He liked it a lot.
Was that a yell that was a satisfaction yell?
Yeah, because he saw the ball start to turn where he wanted it to turn.
You like that one, huh, George?
What he didn't.
Yeah, especially in the 9th frame, that's a big one because now he could set a 192 possible.
Right.
So now Dan has to answer. And that's probably the worst possible result.
Yeah, just never gave it a chance, never got it going to the right.
Yeah, that was definitely inside of his target.
He has a big turn of the wrist as he throws. Was that too much on a ball like that?
Yeah, well, I'm not sure if that caused him to pull it, but like Sue commented, he just didn't get it to his target and get it going to the right.
So the 9th frame may be a crucial decider in this match as George Szczublewski strikes and Dan Gould leaves it open. And now we move to the 10th. And there's Dan Gould with his 2nd strike of the match.
Well, it's important for Dan here to strike out because he's going to force George to at least mark.
Yep.
And nothing has been guaranteed in this match, so.
by either of these guys. So here's 2nd throw for Dan Gould in the 10th frame. Now, and that pesky 10 pin will be the downfall of Dan more than likely in this match.
I did get an opportunity to practice on the practice pair with these guys this morning, and I did notice a lot of 10 pins for myself as well.
So Dan spares the out here to put a 156, and for a guy that came in, as Jim mentioned, with a 232 average, that's a somewhat shocking score to see him put a 156 up. And now all George needs to do is be safe here in the 10th frame, and it'll be a 2nd consecutive, technically a 3rd consecutive win for George Szczublewski, and a chance to pull off the weekly sweep. And a match against Tony Dolan is up next. And George isn't making it easy on himself, is he? George does not hide his emotions, which makes it nice for the television viewing audience to know exactly how he's feeling.
Well, George has to get a couple pins here.
He needs 2 pins.
2nd throw of the 10th frame. And there's the 4 that he needs that will clinch the victory. Right down to the end there, as neither guy seemed to want to figure out a way to win this one.
Well, you can bet that George is going to be trying something new in practice before the next match, because he knows that 172 isn't the score he's looking for.
Not against Tony Dolan. It's not likely going to be enough. So So here's the final throw for George to post his final score up in this victory. And a nice good strike to end things up. And there's the 172 that you mentioned.
That was just the rocket to the pocket right there.
That's for sure.
The rocket to the pocket. I like that. Very good. That was good. So George Szczublewski with a second consecutive win, a 172 to 156 victory over Dan Gould. So George moves on to the next match, and when we come back to the Jamestown Bowling Center, we'll find out what Dan's thoughts were on his Beat the Champ debut. One more match to come right after this. We're in Jamestown, New York at the Jamestown Bowling Company, and this is Beat the Champ. Well, Dan, Jim said it during the match. He said he doesn't think he's ever seen you go 8 frames without getting a strike. Was it as surprising to you as it was to him?
Yeah, the lanes are in a little bit of a transition right now. So, every time I tried to tweak to the right, the ball would check up on me, and then I tried to play where I wanted to play, and I'd leave a lot of 10 pins. And, it just the lanes are in that transition mode. I should have got a different ball out, and I never changed to it, and that might have been the option to go to.
Right, and you're supposed to be the guy that knows these lanes up one side, down the other, right?
I bowl here a lot. I've been bowling here since I was 8 years old. I averaged pretty good here, and that was pretty embarrassing to shoot that.
Well, no reason to be embarrassed, and we know we're going to get more out of you, and I know Jim's got a little, at least something to make you feel a little better about this thing.
Yeah.
Jim, go ahead and give it to him. Give him the prize money.
A little $50 cash prize from Jamestown Bowling Company.
Thank you, sir.
All right, so
appreciate it.
Tough loss for Dan, but George Szczublewski moves on. We've got his next match against another one of our heavy hitters here on Beat the Champ. We'll have you get you ready for that one when we return to the Jamestown Bowling Company.
Tony, no need for introduction here. We see a lot of you on TV. However, it hasn't worked out as well as you would have liked. What's your plan of attack today?
Well, we're just going to put that out of my mind, and just today's a new day, and hopefully we bowl good, and when the time comes, they'll fall.
Well, it was your idea to make me bowl out here, so I have a little bit of an idea what everybody's dealing with. So you told me the lanes were a little tighter. Absolutely, lane's a little tighter. One's a little tighter than the other. So I know you know what you're talking about, so hopefully the practice pair matches the other pair. Yep. So what did you change for bowling balls? What are you seeing versus other houses you bowled in?
Yeah, the lanes are a lot tighter here. The house shot, it doesn't hook as much off the back end, and I'm using a ball with a little more surface to give me that little extra help and kick out the 7, hopefully.
So Tony lined me up today, so I can thank him for a couple of strikes that I got to throw.
Lots of experience in this match. Our third of the day, George Szczublewski. He's in his 4th appearance on Beat the Champ, and that is Tony Dolan making his 10th Beat the Champ show appearance. Of course, George has already won 2 matches here today. This is Tony's debut here today, but Sue, we know how good Tony is. He's one of the best guys in Western New York, and let's see if he can find the groove here. And right off the bat, a very late fall on the 10-pin gives him an opening strike. Now, Tony's got a big advantage based on what we've seen in the first 2 matches.
Well, Tony's got the advantage of coming in on a fresh lane condition, which is, what the other 2 bowlers really got on their first game. But no one's touched the left-hand side yet, and the right-hand side has become a little bit unpredictable.
I think George Szczublewski might use a different word to describe that. So would Justin and Dan. And same thing there. Late fall on the 10-pin gets George Szczublewski an opening strike.
And that was really a terrific shot. I mean, to come out of the gate like that after he has been fishing around looking for, he doesn't have a real easy shot. He's got to make really, really good shots here today.
Yeah. A 212 in the first match to win, a 172 in the second match to win, certainly well under George's 228 average, so we haven't seen the best out of him yet here today, but he'll need to be better than that to beat a good bowler like Tony Dolan.
Well, I'll tell you, as a bowler, it's all relative to what you're bowling on. So they're both obviously bowling on the same condition, and he bowled a couple right-handers and his score prevailed. But sometimes 200 is a good score. I think that the league bowlers have kind of gotten used to the predictable shot. You know where to stand, you know what ball to throw. And scores have been consistent, but sometimes when they're tough, 200 is still a good game.
One more than the opponent is a good score, right?
That's
And
right.
we saw that in our first match, the 212-211 win for George. So off the bat, these guys are finding their groove a little bit. Strikes across the board, as you can see. Janelle Sabins put those X's up on the Castellone Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram scoreboard. For Tony Dolan, I mentioned this is his 10th Beat the Champ show appearance, an overall record of 7 wins and 8 losses. And it's always been somewhat surprising to us that Tony, for a lot of different reasons, has never been more dominant on this show than that. He has only one weekly trophy victory so far in the first year of Beat the Champ, and the 40-year-old from West Seneca with that gaudy 234 average, one of the best bowlers anywhere in Western New York, and it's been somewhat of a surprise that he hasn't had more wins on this show.
Yeah, I know sometimes it just happens that someone is a bit snake bit and people come out and have their best games against you, and that's what we've seen with Tony. That's
happened a number of times where he's bowled well, but he caught somebody with a really good game, and it hasn't allowed him to string a couple of wins together.
There is a lot of mental in this game, and Tony has such an easygoing, good-natured personality that he doesn't really intimidate anyone. He cheers for his competitor. He's sitting clapping for his competitor, and not every bowler approaches it that way.
You mean we got to get Tony to yell a little bit more and glare a little more? Is that what you're telling me?
We got to have him go a little Pete Weber on these people. Wouldn't that shock everybody?
Somehow I just don't see that really ever happening, and Tony certainly better than I do. But maybe we got to work on him then. Maybe we need to take some. What's the opposite of anger management classes?
Get some sunglasses
right?
on him.
We need to get him to some anger enhancement classes. Well, after a couple of really good, powerful throws by George Szczublewski, back to leaving that 10-pin again to end his run of strikes in the first 3 frames.
Well, 10-pin here doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad shot. I mean, you do get a little carry down and the ball hits just a little flatter than they'd like, but it's not really a bad shot. That, however, is not.
That's a bad shot.
That's a bad shot.
I think George would tell you that as well, too. So strikes to open up the first 3, and then an open here for George, and Tony's working 2 strikes and a spare as he moves on to frame number 4. 40-year-old Tony Dolan from West Seneca, 234 average. Long-time bowler, busy bowler, Monday nights at Broadway, Wednesday nights in the Broad Spectrum 3-man team at Spare Time, Friday in the Hammond Pro Shop League at Abbott Lanes, and then Saturday in the Bowling Proprietors Association of Western New York Travel League. All of his averages good and healthy in those leagues, and like we said, the biography and the resume for Tony Dolan show Obenauer Masters champion in 2015, Buffalo Bowler of the Year, numerous city team tournament titles, Tonawanda titles. Pretty much Tony's won everything.
One of the interesting things we talked about before this day even started, before the matches even started today, was that the Jamestown bowlers may have an advantage because we see that they bowl here, they know what to expect, they know what ball to start with. But at the same time, if the lanes don't act the way they're used to them acting, that could be just as much a deterrent, because you already have your mind made up where your moves are going to be and what's going to happen next. Where you're talking about 2 guys here who literally bowl 4 or 5 times a week and have seen it all, and that's the opposite thing. This to them, this is just a league tournament condition.
Yeah.
They're not looking at it with a pre-existing idea of what's going to happen.
It negates the advantage, is what you're saying.
It does if the lanes don't do exactly what they think they're going to do, which is what they do in league every week. But you've got different people with high-performance bowling balls playing different parts of the lane, and they break them down different.
Mm-hmm. Well, whoever wins this match, and there's another strike for George in the 6th frame.
The action will continue on Beat the Champ in just a minute. Welcome back to Beat the Champ.
Keep this one tight.
And there's a sign of a smart bowler and a good competitor, because he really lost his ball reaction coming out of the last match against Dan, and made some decisions here, only had a couple minutes to do it, a couple frames to do it, and he's found a little something at least make them competitive in this match.
Yeah, and you almost wonder, hey, George knows Tony. George has bowled against Tony. George knows how good Tony is. There's a rise to the occasion that I feel like is going on here a little bit.
Could be. And honestly, when you're pushed, you do push a little harder. We talked about how no one was really running away with that last match. But that happens, and I want to say you bowled down to your opponent, but
yeah. See,
the spares can really cost you though on this.
Yeah, and that's a tough one. And
that's unusual
in a tight
to see.
Match like this,
George missed that many spares.
That was close to a layup, should have been, and it wasn't. And George knows it. And he knew it right off the bat, and that changes the dynamics of this match a little bit, because Tony's working a pretty good sized lead at the moment with a chance to really add to it. He can't get everything he wanted there either in the 8th frame, as the 6-pin will hang up.
Well, the carry here will be the great equalizer, because it's just hard for them to get momentum going and get a lot of strikes in a row. I think the most we've seen really is 3 in a row for any of these guys.
Well, you are correct. George had strikes in the first 3. Tony has had strikes in 4, 5, and 6. And he'll get a spare in the 8th. So with a chance to really put this one away almost, that spare makes this once again a tight match of less than 10 pins.
Right. And it's true.
So right off that open, you said, okay, here's Tony's chance to really put this one away. Couldn't do it, so doesn't mean he still won't, but George is still in this one, even with 2 open frames. And there's a big answer by Tony Dolan in the 9th frame.
You know, this is a perfect example where we've talked about over the last year about the 9th frame being that builder frame, because it gives you the ability to just throw the next 3 in a row, and that strike in the 9th means a lot from a pin count standpoint. That was a big strike for Tony there in the 9th.
Almost, I like calling it the
Beautiful.
deciding frame in a lot of ways. I know what you mean, and that's with the reference of the builder frame. But we've seen that so many times in this show that, like you said, that what happens in that 9th frame, particularly in a tight match. Well, if it's not a tight match, it puts it away. If it's a tight match, it keeps it.
Exactly.
It has the chance to either keep it tight if you're behind or emerge victorious.
Right.
So
George absolutely had to have that strike, had to match that strike in order to have a chance to win this match.
Okay, so other than 3 strikes here, what does George have to try to do here in the 10th frame?
Well, this is going to be a big decider right here, because he's already down 12 pins.
Yeah, that's not what he wanted. Not what he wanted, not what he needed. A little puff of the cheeks and an exhale there from George Szczublewski.
No, that left lane has really been his nemesis. And I'm guessing that will carry on for us the rest of the day, because left lane has definitely broken down to be a lot. Left lane's what we call wet dry, and that's much more challenging.
And once again, another missed spare opportunity open for George. Puts the 201 on the board, and that's not going to be enough to get him his 3rd consecutive win.
No,
so
Tony's
got this one wrapped up. So, yeah, boy, George started off bowling really well.
It does matter what he does here, although he's put himself in a great position, and that seals it right there.
So Tony Dolan with a big 10th frame strike here and a slap of the hands to his buddy George Szczublewski, and it's going to be a victory for Tony Dolan that gets him back to the 500 mark on his champ career at 8 wins and 8 losses. And as like I say, George really started off well, and as good as he's bowled here today, and just you can't have 3 open frames and expect to beat Tony Dolan, and not when he's starting to bowl like that. So one more for Tony to really post a nice score here and get a victory.
Yep, so both these guys bowl 4 times a week, and half the time they're bowling in the same league together. So, you know, they do see each other a lot back there in Buffalo.
Sure. You know, and these guys bowl at such a high level, and they're in that circle of really high level impressive bowlers in Buffalo. Final throw for Tony is another strike, and a very impressive job to put a 245 count on the board for Tony Dolan. 245 to 201, good pull away towards the end there, and it's a victory for Tony Dolan. Very impressive.
And Tony can take a deep breath. He finally got that monkey off his back.
That's right. All right, well, when we come back, we get a chance to talk to both guys. You're going to to try to figure out a way to get Tony to be more angry and to yell a little more. I'll do my best to help console George on a tough loss, but we'll come back and then we'll wrap up our first week stay here in Jamestown as we kick off season 2 and 2017 on Beat the Champ. We're back from Jamestown right after this. It's a 245 to 201 win for Tony Dolan over George Szczublewski. George, you start off really hot. That was as well as you bowled here today, and then you ran into a couple of roadblocks.
Yeah, I hate to miss spares, but I missed a couple of spares. I made a good move. I liked what I did, and then I missed those spares. That first 10 pin really got to me missing it too. So, and Tony, obviously Tony bowled great. Tony always bowls great.
Yeah, he does. So, all right, we got a couple tickets to the Lucy Desi Museum for you. If you're in Jamestown, that is where you've got to go. And Jim Meade from here at the Jamestown Bowling Company's got a little bit to give you too, some prize money.
Great bowling.
Thanks.
Great week. I got a 250 cash prize from Jamestown Bowling Company for you.
Thank you. Appreciate
Great bowling again. Thank you.
And Sue, it's a win for Tony Dolan and a chance for him to earn a little money too.
Well, Tony, we talked about it. You finally got the monkey off your back today and got yourself a win. I also thought that we were going to try to get a way to get you more into it by being a little more intimidating. What do you think of that?
I'll need a little practice, a few lessons.
Some dark sunglasses, kind of like screen back.
Pat Brick can help me out.
Okay, well, you won not only the chance to come back and be the champ, you also have some swag today. So we have an oil change and tire rotation from Jim White's, and also a $25 gift card from the Stagecoach West.
Thank you. That's nice.
And you're going to get some lessons from Sue on how to be mean and nasty, right? Is that what you're going to get out of this too? So, well, we're going to see more of Tony because he's coming back for next week's show. Sue and I will wrap up this week's stop in Jamestown. Get you ready for next week when Beat the Champ comes back to the Southern Tier right after this. Well, we saw some interesting bowling in our first 3 matches here in Jamestown, but ultimately the best bowlers and kind of rise to the top, and that's what we saw with Tony Dolan.
Yeah, Tony really capitalized on a good opportunity here as being able to come on as left-hander on a fresh lane condition, and now he gets a chance to be the champ and see how much money he can accumulate.
Right. Janelle, you didn't have a whole lot of high scores to put on the scoreboard. Maybe that'll change next week.
I'm really hoping so. I mean, we know spares are important, and the guys are at least making those spares.
Yeah, well, next week it's another good lineup. Tony Dolan returns. 2 bowlers who are Jamestown guys making their debuts, but right smack in the middle of next week's lineup is one of the most outstanding bowlers we've ever had on this show. That's Chuck Jagodzinski. So make sure you're with us next week when Beat the Champ continues from the Jamestown Bowling Company. We'll see you next week on Beat the Champ.